and a very warm welcome to European Journal, coming to you from DW Studios in Brussels. It's good to have you with us. Let's take a look at what we have for you in this edition. Russia, what Russian women are and aren't allowed to wear and say. Czech Republic, when East Germans stormed the West German embassy in Prague. And Spain, why Europe's biggest vulture population is in danger. It's summer in Europe, time to go on holiday. Tourists traditionally flock to Italy with its beaches and picturesque towns. The island of Sicily is a popular destination. But there's bad news for hikers there. For 2 weeks now, the summit of one of Sicily's main attractions, Mount Etna, has been closed to tourists. There are still 3 active volcanoes in Italy: Stromboli, Vesuvius near Naples, and Europe's tallest volcano, Mount Etna. And Etna is spitting lava again.
For days, Mount Etna has put up a spectacular pyrotechnics display. Carmelo Cavallaro is here before sunrise to get a closer look.
We are at the northern end of Etna, at around 3,100 meters. Here, this crack is due to the eruption, which is typical for Etna. The magma has risen to a very high level. At any moment, a new crater could open up or there could be an explosion without warning.
Even so, Carmelo, one of 40 rangers at Mount Etna, leads us to the volcano. It's a tough climb in thin air and through ankle-deep volcanic ash. And there it is. With each explosion, the crater belches out glowing molten lava, strewing it around for hundreds of meters. The earth heaves and shakes. Only the rangers brave the volcanic activity to get closer. Tourists, however, have to keep away at a distance of 300 meters.
These tourists have read the sign. Their excursion ends here. They have to turn around. But they can stay here and watch.
But there are always some people who try to defy the warning signs. We're in the control room of the Institute of Volcanology in Catania. It's a high-tech nerve center to monitor the volcano.
2 colleagues monitor the volcano around the clock.
They're the first to know if the levels change.
And then they can activate the emergency response.
Dozens of cameras, sensors, and other measuring instruments constantly check Etna's volcanic activity. But despite all the technology, eruptions aren't always foreseeable. That's where the rangers come in.
Depending on which seismograph goes off, the volcanologists send us out to the affected area to find out what's happening.
And if it's necessary, like now, Mount Etna's summit is blocked off. Given how many tourists are ill-equipped for the region, the measure seems right. It's no easy task for the rangers.
Every year, around 300,000 tourists come to the region around the summit. We have to remember this is still an active volcano. Of course, we need to guarantee the safety of the tourists.
Mount Etna continues to baffle experts. No measuring instrument caught this latest eruption, and no one knows how long it will continue.
Politicians in the EU and the US want answers. How exactly did flight MH17 crash in eastern Ukraine? The West has been ratcheting up pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to exert his influence on the pro-Russian separatists who control the region. But Putin is enjoying his power too much. For months now, he has been shrugging off angry warnings and threats from the Europeans. And at home, it's very much the same story. President Putin and his parliament seem to just know best what's good for people and what isn't. And because of new legislation, that now also applies to things such as lacy underwear and swear words.
The Russian rock band Leningrad is popular, but also controversial. They're famous for their profanity-ridden lyrics singing the praises of sex and alcohol. The explicit songs prompt a flurry of censoring beeps. Radio stations play Leningrad songs either in their clean versions or not at all. Concerts have been cancelled. Authorities say that delicate Russian sensibilities should no longer be confronted with such gutter language. A law banning non-normative lexis is the latest variant of Russian censorship. Vladimir Putin signed off on what conservatives in the country have long demanded: action against decadent Western influences. Public cursing is forbidden, as well as smut in films and the theater. Fines range from 2,000 to 200,000 rubles, and employment bans are possible. At Moscow's Academy of Sciences, people are asking whether Russia doesn't perhaps have far more pressing concerns than the fight against cursing and other obscenities.
The classics of Russian literature never skewed obscene words. Pushkin, for instance, often used explicit turns of phrase in his works. For many other well-known Russian writers, a drastic mode of expression was style-forming. A general ban is by no means appropriate.
Online services are also scanned for objectionable content. The index of banned words and phrases is continually expanded. Questionable articles are blocked completely, including an interview explaining the origins of Russian swear words. All vulgar expressions for the most prominent female secondary sexual characteristics will also be penalized. But there is a counter-movement. Gorky 1 and 2, affectionate terms for the bosom, are presumably harmless. And if the new prudery does have to accept nudity, it prefers to keep it safely contained in museums, where, thanks to opening hours and admission fees, the potential danger to morality can be controlled and guided. But outside museums, the eyes of passers-by must not be subjected to unbridled nudity. Apollo, the Greek god of music who stands guard outside Moscow's Bolshoi Theater, received a modesty-preserving fig leaf as part of a general renovation. The deity also adorns Russia's most used banknote, the 100 ruble, and he has done so since the mid-1990s. Now he's been identified as an exhibitionist. It's perhaps 2 millimeters that peek out from under Apollo's tunic. Certainly no big deal. But Duma backbencher Roman Chudyakov sees in it a flagrant violation of law number 426F3 for the protection of minors from dangerous information. As an urgent action, he sees just one solution, an 18+ earmark, like that used on other pornography. The latest proposed law targets the high-heeled shoes so beloved of Russian women. The legislation would impose a height limit on the heels of shoes.
I only wear high heels. I can't wear anything else.
Today I only have 10 centimeters on. I love high heels. A woman without them is not a real woman.
While the country's orthopedists may welcome a limit on shoe height, many Russian women see it as over-regulation from the old days of the Soviet Union. Whether sinful red or racy black, lingerie is also subject to regulations. Underwear fabric must contain 6% cotton due to something called hygroscopy. Only this fabric composition guarantees proper moisture absorption. The reasoning is that below this level, wearers are allegedly subject to skin irritations and pimples.
Many of our customers want to know why they want to take all synthetic underwear off the market. They're outraged and shocked. They've read about it on the internet, and they're asking whether it's really true.
It is true. And not just in Russia, but all over the Eurasian Economic Zone, Putin's pet project. What's presented as a provident public policy seems like nothing more than brutal protectionism. The lingerie market is a huge business, with Russians alone spending 4 billion euros annually on sexy underthings. But this too is a decadence that needs to be remedied. And these, by the way, are the ladies and gentlemen of the Russian parliament who are initiating this moralizing, pleasure-hating legislation, draft laws aimed at criminalizing cursing and obscenity. Their arguments may not be prudent, but they do seem to be hard-hitting. As one of them said, if people were allowed to do what they want, we'd return to the Stone Age. How true.
It's no secret that Vladimir Putin is unhappy with the current political map of Europe. He said a few years ago that he believes the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century. Well, that view is not shared by everyone. Exactly 25 years ago, the approaching end of communism was celebrated in many parts of Europe. In this edition of our summer series, Secret Heroes, we visit a man who, in 1989, was a main driver behind one of the happiest days in German history. Hermann Huber was West Germany's ambassador in the Czech Republic at the time. Thousands of GDR citizens were camping in his garden, hoping to be allowed to enter West Germany. And then the foreign minister arrived.
The news spread through the grapevine. The foreign minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher was in the building. Then came one of the most famous incomplete sentences in recent German history.
We've come to tell you that today, your departure...
The word departure triggered wild cheers in the German embassy in Prague, the city palace with 100 rooms but 3,500 guests. Now the guests knew that their wait had not been in vain. Germany's foreign minister had come from New York. The Soviets had given him the green light. Ambassador Hermann Huber showed him the way.
We drove from the airport to the embassy. And Genscher got out in front of the main gate. And I accompanied him inside. Then we climbed the big stairway to the first floor. We had to blaze a trail through. The refugees allowed us a tiny path through in their middle. But when I told them, "Watch out, Genscher is coming," then they were immediately prepared to do anything.
This is what the embassy looked like in September 1989. A tenting ground full of young families. The people in future of communist East Germany were voting with their feet. The mood varied. At first it was euphoric. The calm attitude of the embassy staff contributed to that.
I told the refugees, "Listen, I can't enter your tent with my shoes." "But Mr. Ambassador," they said, "come on in. You are our ambassador." "Not yet," I said, "but I hope I soon will be."
Two of the refugees are back for a visit, the Malkas. When they came to the embassy in 1989, it was already so full that only women with small children were admitted into the building. Rolf Malke stood outside for 4 days.
Here I am on this picture, by chance. I recognize it because my jacket is unmistakable. And it served me well. It was really cold at night.
All eyes were riveted on Prague. Czechoslovakia was the only country East Germans could visit without a visa. Prague was full of East German cars the refugees left on the streets. The Malkas were two among many who wanted to come to the West. Marion Malke was lucky. She found half a stair step all the way at the top and camped there with her 3-year-old son.
From the moment they opened the door and came toward us saying, "Come in," they took the child out of my hands immediately. This feeling of being received warm-heartedly. Not to be asked questions. Come in. First off, we're taking you in.
Kommt rein, hier seid ihr erstmal aufgenommen.
The Red Cross brought food from the west, pitched tents, and fed thousands of people in a field kitchen. Red Cross helpers were busy around the clock for weeks on end.
Die Botschaft fühlte sich immer stärker.
The embassy kept getting fuller and fuller. After people realized they could climb over the fence in the back, we couldn't really control how many people we had anymore.
Konnten wir es ja fast nicht mehr kontrollieren, wie viele Leute wir hätten.
The Malkas remember.
People waited on the other side and took the children and lifted the strollers over.
Die wurden rübergehoben.
Children were passed over. They were always first. It seemed we had children without parents. But I was able to change that very fast. I let the parents through the front gate.
When the weather turned bad in September, the embassy grounds turned into a field of mud. The toilets were stopped up and everyone's nerves were shot, and no solution was in sight.
Conditions here are catastrophic. One woman gave birth to a child yesterday, but there's no medicine available. There is a doctor on hand. A solution has to be found urgently. We can't stand it anymore.
Ambassador Huber didn't close the gates, though he too was getting uneasy. He'd never experienced the embassy overflowing with people, but he knew that Genscher supported him.
No one in the German capital officially rebuked me. I told them, you can support me if you want, but don't backstab me. And they understood.
This is German television channel 1 with an extra news edition. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For East German refugees in Prague and Warsaw, the waiting is over. The 3,500 people who sought asylum in the embassy in Prague, along with the 650 would-be immigrants in Warsaw, will be allowed to leave for West Germany tonight. East German trains will transport them without stopping across East German territory to the west.
In the end, the refugees succeeded in enforcing their direct emigration. The ambassador brought them all to the station. He hadn't slept for 48 hours.
It was a very strange feeling. Suddenly I missed all the refugees. It sounds weird, but I was no longer used to the empty embassy. But that changed very soon, because more refugees followed.
The embassy filled up again with thousands of refugees, and then the wall opened up.
Collecting donations to protect little tiger babies is easier than drumming up support to save vultures. The less cute an animal, the less sympathy. And vultures have suffered from a bad reputation for years. Spain, and particularly the Pyrenees in the north, are home to Europe's biggest vulture population, but the birds are under threat.
When they start to circle, you know death isn't far away.
Vultures are fantastic birds. They play an important role in nature. They're at the top of the food chain. They can eat meat that could transmit disease, thereby reducing the danger of infection. They are fundamentally important for the health of the ecosystem.
Carrion feeders have found a last refuge in Spain. It has the largest population of vultures in Europe. But conditions for the scavengers could hardly be worse. This Eurasian black vulture lives in captivity. It ate some poisoned carrion and had to be nursed back to health at an animal rescue facility in Castile. It's difficult to cure poisoned birds, and this one nearly died.
It depends on the poison. Some toxins act very quickly, others are slower, but they're basically all fatal. Most of the animals that we see here die.
5 dead vultures were found this year alone in the province of Ciudad Real. They had all been poisoned. We went along with the city's toxin unit. To find the perpetrators, the investigators look for clues like dead animals or poison. And it looks like they found something. This time the victim is a booted eagle. It may have eaten deliberately poisoned bait. Eagles are not just birds of prey, they also eat carrion.
The poisoned meat is probably not actually meant for vultures or eagles, but for foxes. But when the birds eat the carrion, the poison works right away and kills them.
Farmers use the toxic bait to protect their animals from predators, a practice that was allowed until the 1980s. Nowadays, it can be punished with a prison sentence, but most perpetrators get away with it due to lack of evidence.
This is a custom that you still see in farming communities. In recent years, the use of poison has even been rising. We have to do more to stop it.
And if the birds of prey die from it, the farmers aren't bothered. Quite the opposite. This farmer claims he's never used poison, but says he has been tempted. On his cattle breeding farm with more than 200 cows, he says he once saw vultures attacking a live calf.
5 vultures were pecking the calf's guts. I threw stones at them, and the cow drove them away with her horns. It was a big loss. Another calf was also eaten. I don't know if it was already dead, but I think it was alive.
The vultures are hungry. After the emergence of mad cow disease, farmers had to get rid of dead animals. It's only recently they've been allowed to leave carrion on the fields again. But biologists insist that the vultures do not attack living, healthy animals. They say people get that impression because scavengers converge on stillborn calves.
Sometimes when the cow has problems during birth and can't get up, there have been cases of vultures starting to eat the afterbirth directly from the hindquarters of the cow. The farmers see that, and that's why they think the deaths are due to vulture attacks.
The largest European vultures aren't only suffering from a poor image and illegal poison attacks. They're now under threat from a legal substance. Spain has approved the veterinary use of diclofenac for pigs and cattle. In India, the same drug has nearly wiped out the vulture population.
It's a clear threat, because dead animals have often been treated prior with this drug. If vultures eat carcasses less than 7 hours after the animal's death, it's likely that they'll die. They can't process the diclofenac, so it leads to kidney failure and ultimately death.
So far, there hasn't been a death caused by this medication yet. Bird conservationists say there's still time to ban the drug again.
Because if the vultures disappear, Spain will have some serious problems.
The country would have to pay for the removal of the dead animals and their cremation, which is a considerable cost. That's exactly what other countries have been doing, where vultures are already extinct.
There are approximately 80,000 vultures living in Spain. They scavenge around 10,000 tons of carrion a year. Essentially, vultures prevent unsanitary conditions and diseases that spring up when carcasses are left to rot.
And that report brings us to the end of this edition of European Journal. Until next time, thanks for watching, auf Wiedersehen, and bye for now.